In 1988, even though California was in the midst of the Proposition 13 tax revolt, residents of Alameda and Contra Costa counties passed a $225 million bond measure to preserve natural habitat and open spaces. This November, Portland area voters are expected to have a similar opportunity. The Metro Council is considering a $200 million green spaces bond measure to buy land for a regional system of open spaces, trails, river access, and wildlife habitat. Similar to California, this comes at a time when Oregonians find themselves in the throes of dealing with ballot measure 5, and new taxes seem to be about the last thing on everyone's mind. Janet Cobb felt so strongly about the California bond measure that she mortgaged her home and took an unpaid leave of absence from her Park District position to lead the public campaign for the measure. She is with us today to discuss her efforts, which built broad-based support for the measure and led to its success. She will also discuss the national agenda to acquire more open spaces and will have some very timely remarks regarding our own local green spaces program. Janet is Assistant General Manager of Public Affairs for the East Bay Regional Park District, which includes 46 parks on 68,000 acres in Alameda and Contra Costa counties. Please join me in welcoming Janet Cobb to the City Club.
Good afternoon. I'm really happy to be here, but I have a problem with your weather. When we were preparing to come, I was here a couple of weeks ago, and everyone said, oh, it's very unseasonable, this. In fact, Abby, I mean, some of the people right here, Mary, they said, this is very unexpected and unusual. So I called the airport, and they said, well, it's 74 degrees, and I put in everything of woolen content. And as the plane came in, they said, when you land in Portland, it will be 84. And everybody said, oh. And then the pilot got on a few minutes later, and he said, I have to correct it. It will be 94 when you land. So I expect a nice, cool, damp place. And I must say, I think we've changed weather. After we came off of our Rogue River trip, we drove home. It had been dry and warm. And we arrived in the Bay Area to have rain. And it also rained in Los Angeles. So I think we've switched, and people are wanting to come to Oregon, and I'm sure you know that, but I think that they've gone a little bit far in changing your weather. So you have to work on a few more showers. My first trip to this Portland area was when I was very young. I'm not going to tell you just how young, but you will understand that my Uncle Arthur was building and supervising the original Lloyd Center. So my Aunt Alta took me to Mount Hood at that time, and I absolutely fell in love with this area. So I'm always looking for excuses to come back, and I really am enjoying these trips. We passed a bond measure in Lake Oswego. Gresham passed a bond measure, and I want to share a little bit about our bond measure in California. Not that it was tidy and neat and politely done. It was not. It was like a horse race. We are into drama in California. We don't do anything very easily. And we decided in January that we would go out for a $225 million bond measure after looking at all of the other possibilities. We had a master plan that called for $160 million to complete our master plan, and I don't know about you, but it seems like an awful lot of money. And so we started to look at all the prospects and possibilities, and by June, we had a board vote. It was very difficult to get that vote. Our board members didn't want to risk losing. Risk is a hard thing, and but they voted unanimously to go ahead after considerable input from the community. So many times, as it is everywhere else, we had to lead our leaders, and that is often the case, as you know. That's what democracy is all about. So I'm looking out at a group of spark plugs, I feel, and having been a spark plug, I'm counting on all of you to risk and to generate a lot of heat to get this movement going up here. We decided to include the local parks and groups, and we have 36. To give you a little perspective, actually, since this bio was written, we now have 74,000 acres. Because of this bond measure, we are acquiring land rapidly. We are acquiring trails to connect that land. We have 47 parks now, and it's expanding daily. We can't keep up with the maths. But we're in a real race. It's not a stroll that we're endeavoring here to accomplish. We have to work very quickly because development is all about. We have 44,000 housing permits in one small area of our 2 counties. Our 2 counties have about 2.5 million people, and I believe you have about 3 million people in Oregon. So you understand what we're up against. 800,000 people move into our state each year, and we get our fair share. So we are racing ahead, trying to expand our parks and connect them. We decided to give the local park districts 25%. So this last Friday, we sold $60 million worth of bonds. That is the second go-round. We have staged the bond sales. I am happy to say that the first 3 years went very, very smoothly, and that the local park districts, they expanded by putting in senior centers, swimming centers. They have soccer fields and baseball diamonds. And we are expanding the regional parks so that we have a complementary system in our region. It's very exciting to see the way it's happened. We are working cooperatively for the first time, and cooperation is not always easy to come by, as you all know, when you're trying to do something big. But as the signs go up saying this park was expanded by the use of Measure AA funds, people are gaining a lot of satisfaction, and they're certainly feeling that all of the work that they put into it was very, very helpful. We had 300 volunteers. We had the leadership of the business community, and I can tell you that if I have one theme, it's that everyone is a conservationist. The environmentalists were actually the people who were the most against the measure initially. They wanted to wait until 1990. And I can only tell you and urge you not to wait, because if we had waited till 1990, we would have had an earthquake and a recession to deal with. And as I stood addressing our board the following November, I was extremely grateful that we had not waited until that November, because we certainly wouldn't. We would have been into earthquake repairs, and we would certainly not have had a bond measure. So I urge you to go. There is never a perfect time. There are never perfect circumstances, and I would urge you to think big and to be very, very bold. The competition out there for a message to the people of what's at stake, there are many, many competing forces. Everyone has a good message, and you must put yours forth and preserve this wonderful area that is in your stewardship. This region is special in so many ways that I think those of you who live here perhaps don't, you take it for granted. We all take our places for granted. And I think that I was just saying at the table here that your people are very polite. It's amazing. If you come to California, you'll understand what I mean. They're very polite. The pace is like there's a determined pace to be reasonable and sane. Hang on to that. Take your walks in your green spaces and hit the trail, so to speak, so that you can keep some perspective and some balance in your lives. In many ways, we've lost that in California, and once you lose it, it's very difficult to get it back. So while I'm saying to you that the Californians, and I mean every Californian I know, including my husband, who was just recruited by the University of Oregon, he took our nephew there to visit, and he came out saying, I think I'll go back to school at the University of Oregon. I said, wait a minute. So everyone I know wants to move to Oregon. It's an incredible phenomenon in California, and I dare say if you came down there, you would be more frightened than you really are at this moment in time. So my theory is that if everyone wants to come to Oregon, you'd better help make them pay their way when they get here. And I think you've been very wise in your growth management strategies. You have said, this is what we want. This is an area you can develop. And in working with developers in California, they always say, what do you environmentalists want? And I've come up with a great answer. I want 90%. And they say, okay, well, we can work with that if you'll just stick with that. You know, I'm really very obnoxious about it. And I call them slobbering beasts. It's become a term of endearment between us. And I have to tell you that I cannot compliment them enough, because at a time when the League of Women Voters and the environmentalists wanted to go slowly, these developers said, Janet, what is it that you want? And I was able to just whip out this map that's inside this brochure. I think each of you have it on your table, and say, this is what I want. This is what I want. I want 20,000 more acres, and I want to add another 1,000 miles of trail. And anything else that I can get is what I want. And they said, fine, we'll help you get it. And they did. And our traditional adversaries were cattlemen, the Farm Bureau, and you know, we created such a phenomenon of, this is what we're going to do it together. It is going to be fun, and we are going to have something that no one else has ever done for this area. Our park district was started during the Depression in the 30s, and they started by taxing themselves 5 cents. And so from that, even though people are very cautious, they want agencies to be accountable, and I can't urge you enough that accountability is critical, and they want boldness and they want a vision. And I think you have all those ingredients here in Portland, and I salute you and I commend you, and I expect each and every one of you to be leaders in this new effort. I think that you will feel down the road that your children and your grandchildren, all the children who will follow, will thank you in ways that you will never realize. But there's something inside, once you've done one of these measures, that saves something so special. Your rivers will be cleaner, your air will be cleaner, you will have wildlife in your, within your community. You will have, you know, as we poll, we find that people are more concerned about wildlife than they are their own children. Now that tells us something. And I think it may be that we're looking at voluntary population control here, but I think that we have to keep in mind that when wildlife suffers, we all suffer. And so I guess I'm urging you each to be in close communication with wildlife, and if this gentleman turns wild during this lunch, we're going to have to really calm him down. But I think that you need to know that they are indicator species, and we're not separate, we're not apart. We are all in this together, and so I'm expecting great things of you. When we put the ballot measure on in June, we didn't have a lot of money, we didn't have much time, we had 2.5 million people to communicate with, and so we became very bold. And through talk shows and community meetings and funds that were given to us by the development community and environmentalists started raising money once they could see that the train was leaving. They were very helpful. So I want to commend business people who are able to get past the either or, the them and us attitude. They pulled more than their weight, and they have had a great deal of satisfaction from that. And it pays off down the road for them because the quality of life in the community stays high, and that maintains property values. And we find that people who are near parks and open spaces that they can walk to, that their children can enjoy, that this benefits their property values as well. So I'm always trying to make the case on economics, if not aesthetics, but I think they're both terribly important to our communities. We ended up with 68% of the vote. It was a miracle. And it hasn't been done before or since, and I'm expecting you to pass us up. I'd love to see a 70% vote up here. But I think that we had just passed Prop 70, which was $769 million for the entire state. That program is also going very well. And what we found is that people are willing to invest in their quality of life, and they want desperately to save these spaces that have meant so much to them as children, and they want the children to follow to be able to connect with nature. So I think that everyone who worked on the campaign, everyone who worked on the education effort, certainly the staff that's implementing the project now, they're all feeling a great deal of satisfaction that for generations to come, this will make an enormous difference in our area. I want to talk just a little bit about things that are going on around the country. There's an organization called Open Space America, and while each of us in our communities has to take responsibility for our own area and try to take our stewardship responsibilities, we need to link up national parks, state parks, local parks, regional parks. We need to join forces and help one another and talk about the cause. Education's important, fire and police are important, so are parks, and open space is very, very important to the way we live. And so we have this movement going, and the new program concerns trying to amend the U.S. Constitution and we're just starting out on an education effort, to put the environment in that document. Now, James Madison, took him 203 years to get his last amendment through, and so it's a good thing for perseverance. The next time you see me, I'll be much, much older. But I think that it is now, I met with Senator Gore some weeks ago, and I'm very encouraged that people throughout the country are saying that, yes, the environment, when we initiated this document in the 1700s, we certainly didn't expect all that was to follow. And things have changed, and so our documents need to change as well to reflect our new concerns and consensus. So I've put some brochures on the table, and I welcome you to join our education effort to spread the word and to talk to your friends and neighbors and let them know that this is a possibility. We also are looking at amending the IRS tax laws, and we thought we'd start with small things, And there are no small ideas when this group gets together. We thought that it would be a good idea to have 100% tax write-offs for people who give public agencies land. As you know, there are many farmers and ranchers. I've just heard of a ranch in California. It's the last original Spanish land grant, 28,000 acres of special oak woodlands. And it's just been taken out of the Williamson Act. So, does anybody here know Mr. Coates? Because I'm looking for Mr. Coates now, who owns this ranch. And we're going to have a chat about, wouldn't it be wonderful for this to be a state park? And I'm convinced that he will buy this argument and hand it right over, I'm sure he'll just be thrilled to do it. But he flies out from New Jersey every now and again to ride his horse on this land, and I think it would make a great place for people from Oregon to come down and visit us. So I'm working on that, and if he can write it off 100% appraised value, you see, even if we had a 3 to 5 year window, we would really gain a lot of land for the public good. And we're working on the public trust doctrine in California to a large degree so that we can save the rivers and save the creeks that run into them, so that we can try to save the spaces that really belong to all people. And we're having wonderful reception from private landowners, because it turns out that people who own large pieces of land often love the land. And the farmers and the ranchers and people who've had this land really want to see other people enjoy it in the future. And so we are having great success with this. The other thing I'd like to do is I would like to get one B-1 bomber, well, maybe two. And I would like to have $1 billion a year for acquiring open space in all 50 states. And I've written to the president with this proposal. And I'm sure he's going to answer me very soon, just as soon as he gets through with his fishing trip in Montana. And I think it's a good proposal that the land and water funds be not a token issue. We now get $20 million stateside. So just think of the possibilities. If you were going to pass this bond measure here, and if Lake Oswego and Gresham and so on had their own smaller issuances, and you were able to get matching funds from the Land and Water Conservation Funds through oil leases and so on, you would be able to really expand your system very rapidly, and you would then have the assurance that you would have these large areas preserved. That helps you, and it helps the developers and my slobbering beast friends, I call them, and they're saying, well, you just tell us what we can do. You tell us what you want, and we'll tell you what we're going to do. And I say, fine, this is what I want, this is what you can do. They say, good. Get out of our way. Let's go at it. So I think that there's a good way of working out some compromises that are pretty exciting and that work for people who are in business and industry and commerce, and work for those people who are trying to preserve their quality of life in their local areas. So we're working on that. We also believe that it will create jobs, and that each one of these proposals will create jobs. Certainly in the East Bay Regional Park District, we have 580 professional jobs. We have 180 seasonal workers. We have a very large system with very well-paid people, and we are also training the Conservation Corps people. We are using prisoners to do some of the trail work. We are having volunteers. We started a Parks Partners group where volunteers come in, and we've had 150,000 hours this last year of volunteers coming in and helping. So you see, it's a very very busy and ambitious program, and I think probably one of the best things is to get into some kind of a dialogue with you so that you know that you can ask questions, because there's really so much to cover. I can only say that as I meet people here, I feel strongly that each of you is a conservationist in your heart, and that we need to work always. Our rivers need restoring, our forests need replanting. We have so much restoration work to do. And as I see young people looking for work, and people who've had careers now looking to retrain to get into other work for the next segment of their lives, that these environmental jobs offer tremendous possibilities. And I think we can have Job Corps involvement. I've talked with Bill Mott, who was National Parks Director. He's always wanted a very large national Job Corps to work in the national parks. And I think that some of those proposals are about ready to come to fruition, that we need to look at connecting children from very, very early stages, so that when they go to school, they are connected with nature right away, and that our education programs serve them. And always the outdoor science is connected with the parklands, the open spaces, the trails. And then we start the loop so that many, many children in our cities do not know that parks, that biology, that all of these things are possible jobs for their future. And they are jobs that people love, and fish and game. I mean, there's so many possibilities, and they don't even know about it. So as we take children through the education system, we keep needing to build that in. And we're having wonderful cooperation from banks, from businesses. Clorox has just adopted our park, another park. We have many businesses that are adopting parks. Their people come out on weekends and volunteer. There's a tremendous investment in the community. And when you get that kind of spirit going, it's really an unbeatable combination of business, conservationists, environmentalists, farmers, ranchers, and it turns out that everybody knows something, and that everybody has something to bring to this cooperative adventure, and that we're all learning. And I think that that's the spirit that we want to go forward with, is that business people are essential. They started the trail system and all of the parks in Minneapolis. I was very, very impressed with them. I think in DuPage County they have done the same. As I go around the country, I've been very, very impressed with how business people are taking the leadership in these environmental matters. And I see business people as being crucial to this next stage of leadership that we all want. I attended a Green Plans meeting, and it doesn't matter what you call it, whether you call it a green plan and you think of that in terms of dollar bills, or you think of it in terms of trees and greenery, but it is important to think about what you want as a community. And so what's in it for Portland? It's what's in it. There's so much in it that you can't even imagine, because you see this with eyes every day, and you do take it for granted. I know you do, because when I come, I'm going, ooh, ah, I'm walking around. My hosts are taking me on walks along the river. It's fabulous. I mean, you just don't know how fabulous that river is, and that wonderful promenade. It's what every great city has around the world. When you go to London, you visit their parks. When you come here, you go along your river. All those things are terribly crucial to your total quality of life. And so I applaud you and I commend you, and I hope you will think very, very big in this next effort, and I hope you will be very, very bold, and I'm sure that there will not be, every single thing will not be smooth and fine and dandy, and you may have to forget your manners for a short period, but I'm counting on you to do it, and anything that I can do to help you, I would be delighted to do so. Let's have a few questions to get a sense of what you're interested in.
This is a very simple question that I'm sure you can answer in just a couple of seconds. There's a debate in the Portland area between the proponents of strict adherence to urban growth boundaries, who propose infill use of existing unimproved land within the boundaries, and those who wish to set aside that land for urban green spaces. Additionally, economists predict about 500,000 new residents in the area in the coming decades. How would you suggest we balance the need to confine urban sprawl, provide for green spaces, and house the population?
Well, that's a simple one, isn't it? Well, I think you should create the perfect world model here. You've actually been the leaders in these growth management issues. We always tout you in California. We say in Oregon they do it right. And we're trying to now draw urban boundaries, which is just about impossible when you have this engine going that is so development oriented. So I think the best thing is to bring all the players into the room and to sit down with a very good map and to think about your priorities. We can't save it all. And we have to, even though the polls say that people care more about wildlife than they do their own children, we need to take people into account. We need to take a hard look at how we want to live and what that living is going to entail. And I think that by increasing our transportation system, by encouraging people to live in smaller spaces and use larger green spaces, we are seeing that people are buying smaller and smaller units because, in fact, people they work all day and they like to come home and not mow lawns. They're perfectly happy to let us mow the lawns. And so it's a conversion. It's a slow process, but I would bring everybody into the room and with a nice map, and I would get right down to it. There isn't any sense wasting energy or time on negativity. I mean, the problem is here and we have to deal with it. And everyone is well educated and bright and well-meaning, and we have to work out a solution. So I think you must come together and draw the lines and think how you want, poll your people, talk to your people, find out how they want to live now and what's possible in this economic time, and then try to design some new systems. It's a very exciting time for innovation right now in how people will live in the 21st century, and some exciting new models are coming up. Davis has some. This gentleman who's coming to talk to you may have something to share with you about that. And I think smaller spaces for living daily and larger spaces to go to in your free time that are actually free from other toils, such as many of us know in mowing lawns and trimming and so on. So there will be new ways of living, and I expect that out of this region some of those things will come, new models. Yes?
Welcome to Portland.
Thank you.
Doug McCourt, Chair of the Standing Committee on Energy and Environment. And my question for you is, do you feel that protection of open spaces and green spaces will receive more attention and support under a Democratic administration led by Bill Clinton and Al Gore?
Now I can't touch that, you know. I'm looking for leadership in every place, and I have had a few disappointments, as I'm sure you all have, with leadership in various places, both Democratic and Republican. And I think we have a new opportunity now to really put our shoulder to the wheel here and start coming up with solutions rather than trying to avoid them. You know, it's been a very easy thing to say business is against the environment. I mean, really, we were all sent to school. We cannot buy such a simple solution and such a simple problem stated. If the business people are the most likely, I believe, to lead to the solutions for this next century. And when I went to this Green Plans meeting, I was fascinated that people from Austria said that when they worked with industry at first said, we are going to leave, we're going to another country, we're not going along with all these regulations. What people found was that when they put the scrubbers on their factories, when they implemented the recycling of water and energy, that they saved money. And one company saved $5 million the first year and $10 million by the third year. And so what I'm seeing, and as I'm talking with people from oil companies and industrial manufacturing groups, what I'm seeing is that they are very, very open, and I would like to give them credit for that. I think that we are all conservationists. We have turned this word environmentalist into kind of a blocking, and that isn't good enough. Blocking things isn't good enough. You have to work with people to come up with solutions. So I'm very excited about the possibilities in the next few months, all the ideas that will come forward. I know that my friend who went to Rio came back. He is working with the World Bank. And he came back and he said, for the first time in all of these many years he's worked on environmental matters, he was treated badly because he was an American. And I found it very sobering because he's one of the most wonderful, genuine, happy, really relates well to people. And he said that he was treated badly for the first time in all of his career because he was an American, and the third world countries felt that we were using up too many resources. And I think we need to take a hard look at that, and I think we can become much more creative. I think we have all of the possibilities here, and I'm expecting that young people now in colleges and universities are going to be addressing these issues and coming up with new solutions, and I'm seeing that business people are doing just the same thing, and they're doing it in the name of economies. But I think that everyone will be involved in the next 10 years. Hi.
I'm Don Sterling, a member of the club. What has your organization done to provide for paying for the operation and maintenance of the properties that you've taken on?
We have a tax base that as you know, we don't have a budget in California right now, so anything I say can change in the next 8 hours. But we have a guaranteed tax base, and that money was shifted. So when I came to the Park District, there was $1 million used for acquisition each year. I'm happy to say that we were able to raise, we have about $26 million in grants, and that our capital projects have been funded not out of the general fund, but out of these special grant funds. The money that we have now put into acquisition, some 27 million in the last 3 years, that money then comes from the AA money, and the operation and maintenance comes from our tax revenues. We have also, we are looking at generating private funds as well, as I spoke about the volunteers. But I think it's terribly important that you have a plan for managing and operating. I assume you would be land banking a lot of this property. We tend, because we're so urbanized, and you can imagine having all of Oregon in 2 counties, that it's more difficult to land bank there, but we will be land banking some of it. We tend to build staging areas and access and to try to connect the people with that land very promptly, as much as our operations budget will allow. About 75% of our $47 million budget goes toward employee costs and and maintenance and operation. So you can see that it is a very large chunk. We've diverted all the money from acquisition and capital into operation and maintenance, and it's working out very well at this moment.
Hi, Mike Hauk, member of City Club. Would you give just a very brief description of the interpretive program, and in your opinion, what role that plays in the overall health of and effectiveness of the East Bay system?
Yes, we have 36, 38, depending on the season, interpreters who are educators, and they go into the schools, and schools come to us. We have a Parks Express bus program, which buses children, disabled, and seniors into the parks, and these children are met by an interpreter who talks to them about the environment, who walks them by the creek, who explains the life system, explains the life cycle of the marsh. It's terribly important. We have invested a good deal of money in the interpretive process. We have just done a pretty extensive guide for teachers. Our foundation, which I'm executive director of, raised a considerable amount of money to distribute it to 800 schools. We've produced videos on the marshes. We've produced videos on our Native American cultural aspects, and we are sending those to the schools and distributing them. It's critical to interpret the resource. Many people are coming in from other countries, and they do not have the same ethic that we have about preserving and protecting our land. So we're finding it especially important now as new people come in from other countries, other places, and other states even, where they have bigger areas. They're coming into an area which is much more urbanized. So we can't have people taking limbs off trees. We can't have people throwing things into the creeks. And so we're having to do a lot of education. We're educating all the time. Our park rangers are very knowledgeable as well, but we're doing more and more through television, more and more through news articles, free print, opportunities, features, trying to educate people all the time about the resource. It's really critical if we're expecting to work in close harmony with all of the various groups. And we're finding it to be very successful. I would really urge you to work with your schools, because these children are going to grow up to take over what we are trying to save, and they need to be trained in the importance of those systems, and they need to know how they fit into it, that we measure our lifetimes in decades, and these trees and so on that are here, these landforms are here on. And so it gives one perspective, and I think most children respond to that. We had an acorn project. I'm president of the California Oak Foundation, and I made the mistake of sending out an appeal for acorns to plant the burn area. We lost 3,300 homes, and so we wanted to replant, and I just sent out one little press release on a Friday night. It was no big deal. And the next morning, I'm drinking tea in bed, reading the paper, and KCBS called, and then all the news stations picked it up, and my office was inundated. I mean, the entire park district, thousands of pounds of acorns. Boy Scouts picked up 10, this bags. The master gardeners from Placerville brought me a truckload. I mean, it became quite a joke. So they're growing acorns all over California right now, and this fall we're going to plant them. Next week I'm going to go home and send out a press release at 5 o'clock on a Friday night and say, send money. It's like, it definitely, hold the acorns. But I think what it did, that small example shows you how much people really want to respond. They really wanted to help people. They knew how devastated people were. And it's the simple act of planting an acorn and seeing these little shoots come up, and that act of then taking it and planting, helping someone who lost their home. It's a very person-to-person helpfulness, and it was very, very impressive. People say people in California are very cynical, and I found it to be just the opposite. We'll see if they send money, and then I'll let you know. Shall I say send it to Portland? Probably. Yes.
Ted Kay, City Club member. In Portland, we have an increasing problem coming from the intersection of two urban issues, one increasing park availability and the other homelessness. Our forest park is in danger of burning down this summer because of transient fires in it. Wondering what your solutions or ways that you are addressing that problem in your area.
Well, you know, we're so overpopulated in some regions, and we've had 6 years of drought in California. So this fire that came through definitely was a wake-up call for everyone. The fact of the matter is that we've had some 11 fires in that area since 1917. And when you look at the fire history and the impacts of people, what we've done, I think, is we think that we are so powerful and so in charge of nature that if we build a house there, the fire wouldn't dare to come, you know? And everybody talks about fire breaks, very important. I met with the Department of Forestry director on Wednesday, and we were talking about all these prevention methods and so on, and how to inform people about their responsibilities. And they keep stressing individual responsibility. But the fact is, city planners, developers, everyone who buys a home needs to take responsibility for the planning of these areas. And we have made enormous mistakes in California. Now we're going up into the woodlands, and it's just, we have to stand back and look at what's basically safe. The fire that started in our area, it went a tremendous distance in 15 minutes. In 15 minutes, those 20 people were killed. And it was just like a train coming through. So when you're looking at your forested areas and so on, you have to remember that there are forces bigger than all of us. And nature really is not that impressed with our investments. Nature has a way of saying, you know, I'm sending this 90-mile-an-hour fire wind through here, and the slightest spark from anything is going to take it, just like a train, right toward the bay. And it was a very big lesson, and you know, we didn't learn it. Because right now, if you go on Highway 24 and Highway 13, where it crosses, you will see that we had 8-lane freeways that were provided the fuel break. And that fire, the trees were so high, the pine and eucalyptus scent, and the wind was so fierce that it took ashes clear to the airport. And so I think we need to stand back and take into account these issues of planning and development and responsibility in our cities for zoning, for all of these things. We have to be cognizant that we're not here alone, you know? So I don't know whether that really answers your question, but I think it needs to be an integrated, comprehensive approach, because going at it, one person saying, well, I'm going to build a little fire break around, that will be helpful, and using fire-safe roofing and all these kinds of things. But the fact is, these elements in nature are so overwhelming that we have to start taking a look at that. And we are getting lots of lessons in every time I leave California. People don't want me to leave now. I was away when the fire happened. I was away when the earthquake happened. I was speaking in Albuquerque when the first big earthquake. I was in New Jersey when the big fire came, and very close to my house. And I was up here last time when we had the earthquake in Los Angeles. So they're thinking I should stay in California. I'm afraid to hear what's happening there now. But we need to be careful, and we need to comprehensively plan. Yes?
I'm Ray Polani, a City Club member. You know, California is called the Golden State, and I wonder if you have a reforestation program in your park, and how aggressive it is and how much you're devoting to it.
In our park system, they've actually not been, we have a lot of grasslands, and we have been planting now for the last 5 years oaks and redwoods. We're trying to stay with native trees and plants and not have introduced species. That program is quite successful right now. We have mostly private contributions, and we're planting thousands of trees that people are contributing, and we're finding a way for people to fund that. throughout California, there are reforestation plans, and we need to step that up. And I see that as a place for job development. And that's one of the things that I talked about with Richard Wilson, the Director of Forestry, is that we need to get young people involved. I'm working with a lot of Conservation Corps people, and I'm very impressed with what they can do. And they actually replanted part of Highway 24 where the fire was with oak trees. And we're trying not to put in trees that are very tall and that when there's a high wind can blow. So we're working on it. Yes?
Dick Dougal, City Club. You have not mentioned the Nature Conservancy, which is very active in Oregon, doing some parallel things. Would you say how you work with them, or don't you, in California?
Yes, we do. I have high regard for the Nature Conservancy. They have an aggressive acquisition program, and they're doing very fine work. One of the most wonderful examples is the Cosumnes River in Sacramento, and they have a huge preserve there, and they tend to buy very large blocks of land, and they've saved large areas throughout California. They're doing a fantastic job. We also have Trust for Public Land, and I think you have some people here who work with that group. I think we need to use every avenue we can. We are up against a steamroller that is called population, and it's coming at us pretty hard and fast. The demands are great, and while we're educating ourselves to reduce consumption and to live in a little more reasonable way with some limits on ourselves, and I think that will come as voluntary. We see it in recycling in California, we see it in energy savings. I think people are really leading the way, and so we're seeing that children are a vital force as well. The Nature Conservancy, I can't say enough good things about it. It's really doing fantastic work. It involves, I'm sure most of you know, they save large blocks of land. They've saved some big ranches in Texas. They've saved places in the Rockies. They're really ambitious, and you should definitely support them in their work. I see all of these things as critical and that they all dovetail. And the Trust for Public Land, as you know, buys land and then often sells it to public agencies. And so every means that we can use to save our wonderful green spaces should be used. And there are some creative and inventive people out there who are being very aggressive, and I think that's what's called for right now. Yes?
Charlie Hale, City Club member. Janet, could you give us a picture of the proportion of the Measure AA funds that were used for active recreation facilities versus undeveloped natural open space?
We divided our bond measure into 75-25. So 75% went to the regional parks and 25% went to the local parks. And we decided that since the local parks had less money than we had at that time, that we would give them the largest share of the first two bond measures. So by the end of this next 3-year section, they will be completely paid off. Their $56 million will be spent. And their projects, as I said, are much more active recreation projects. That keeps people close to home, having sports fields, helps kids have swimming lessons, all those kinds of things. And we, on the other hand, have the 75% for buying large pieces of land, and the Nature Conservancy isn't active in our particular region. The East Bay Regional Park District has served that function for more than 50 years, but they certainly are acting where there isn't an agency that is as well funded as ours. So by every means possible, we are cooperating with local cities and county governments. We are looking at zoning. We are expanding the park district. I've had 2 exciting calls in the last week. One, a man wanted to give me 68 acres of wetlands down in Foster City. It's not in our district, but I'll accept it and get it to the people. Just send land anytime, you know. And then I had a call last Friday at about 5:05, and a developer asked if I would accept 4,000 acres. And I said, well, yes, this would put a smile on my face. And we have had a proposal from another development where, I'm not kidding about the 90-10. They've offered us 90% of the land free, and they are going to develop 10% of it. Now, you'd think we'd be grateful, but there's been such a hubbub because we want it all, of course. And I can't say enough about reasonableness, and I'm hoping it will dawn any time now. So they will develop it. We will get 90% of the land free. There are still people in our midst who want to pay. It was appraised at more than $30 million, and we don't have $30 million designated for that. It is going to be a $320 million project. And I think through negotiation, there are many things. I've negotiated an interpretive center with them. I think that there are many things that they will add as far as amenities, trails, all kinds of education possibilities for children. And so I think there are many, many things to negotiate. I venture to say by the time push comes to shove and they get their approval, we may get 95. And they'll build 5%, and we will still get all of these things. So I'm saying that while you should look like a nice lady or a nice gentleman, you don't have to really be a pushover, you know. There are many ways to negotiate these things, and I would urge you to keep in mind long haul, like 100 years from now. Yes?
Hi, Allison Heiberger, City Club member. Janet, what were the best ways you got the word out about your ballot measure? We're 3 months from a vote, and Metropolitan Greenspaces isn't a household word yet, I don't think.
I'm expecting all of you to streak right out of here with your green ribbons. And that's all, you know, and that will get attention. I think that you're going to have to be a little bit outrageous. I don't think you're going to be able to afford, and nor would I necessarily recommend purchase time. I think that you have to create a parade. I'm expecting this to be the first, right out this door and down the stairs and out on the sidewalk, being the first part of that parade. You have 3 months. The best campaigns, as I think I said before, are not strolls. They are horse races. And I think that you're probably all in the summer doldrums right now. And all I can say is don't get discouraged. Just keep going. And in September, I would expect you to all keep working towards September, and when September comes, take your message to the people in every way that you can. There are a lot of folks here. There are a lot of slides. We can have them reproduced. That you go out and talk to your neighbors, that you hold coffees, that you go to your other organizations, that you make your case. A picture is worth 1,000 words, and you should make a case for the wildlife, for preserving these wonderful areas that you are stewards of, and you need to take it out. I became the spokesperson for it. Actually, I think you would have called me a zealot. And I think there's no substitute for really beating on the drum very hard and loud. There are a lot of messages out there. Everyone thinks they have the greatest idea. I was convinced mine was the best. And I think that the wonderful thing we were able to do was that everyone worked together. The ranchers didn't oppose us. The Farm Bureau didn't oppose us. The Taxpayers Association didn't oppose us, although I had a number of debates with them. They said, do it a few years from now. Everybody wanted to put off this high-risk venture. And I can only say that I think you should go fast, and I think you should be very bold, and I think you should think as big as you can, and then I think we should look for $1 billion to match your money so that there's money coming at you. And the most important thing you can do for yourselves in this little lull in the summer is in the next month, from now through August 15th, I would suggest that you all sit down and write up the plan, and then you get that to Metro, and that you write down all of your ideas on how you would ideally manage these lands, because you want to be accountable long term. You want to educate your friends and all the people about how you're going to not only acquire it and not only make sure that it is in perpetuity saved, but that it will be maintained and operated in a way that is open to people, that supports the plant and wildlife community. And I think it's terribly important to have a very, very solid plan. So I would really urge you to funnel all that information and to be very aggressive, because you happen to be here and it's a wonderful, wonderful place, and you're very, very fortunate. And I know that you will want people to think well of you 100 and 200 years from now. And of course, I will be around to tell them just what your names were there. But I expect great things of you, and I see a lot of leadership in this area. I'm very impressed with it. The people are nicer here. I mean, they really are very, very nice. I can see why people want to come. But the thing is, when they come, they must pay their way. And I think by having these bonds, when they come, they have to pay their way. And I would have you think about user fees. And I know that may be somewhat novel, but in California, people pay user fees very willingly, and to some of these big recreation areas that we've developed. And we find that people are willing to pay for these special services, and that recreation close to home is a very big business. And I think it will encourage entrepreneurship in this area. It will encourage job development. It will encourage an economic, a broader-based economic base for this region. And people, maybe you can talk people into just visiting Portland and going home, you know, I don't know. I don't know. My husband decided to sign up at the University of Oregon after he visited there, so everyone wants to be here because it's very, very beautiful and special, and you're all nice. But you have to figure out a way to keep it nice and to keep it special, and so that's what I'm counting on you for. So good luck, and let us know how we can help. I think one of the satisfactions long term is that this land will be saved forever and ever, and these trail connections will be used as alternative transit, as wildlife corridors, and all of these connections, whether you call it an emerald necklace, whether you call it green spaces, whether you call it trails, whether you call, pathways, as they do in Lake Oswego, whatever you call it, it needs to come from each of you, and it needs to come together in a unified system. And it needs to be very big, because the proportion is very important. Thank you very much.
Janet, thanks for coming and sharing your enthusiasm. Recently, the City Club announced 2 premier issues that it was interested in studying this year, and one of those was regional growth, and this certainly fits that agenda. So again, thank you very much. We loved having you here in Portland, and we are adjourned.